Both Greece and Libya are of great concern to Human Rights Watch, and I have been in both countries this year looking at the conditions for migrants and asylum seekers. The difference is that Greece is a member state of the European Union and is bound to conform to the rules that the European Union has agreed upon for the treatment of asylum seekers in particular. And Greece has failed to do this. They've blatantly failed to conform to the harmonized standards that have been agreed upon for the conditions of detention, what are called reception conditions, for the qualification for asylum, the standards that a person has to meet to be recognized as a refugee, and finally for the procedures that asylum seekers can be expected to have governments use to determine whether they are refugees or not. And in all of three of these cases, Greece has fallen very well short of the standards agreed upon as a member state of the European Union. Libya is outside the European Union, and the problem that we see there, as we see with a number of other neighboring states like Turkey, like Ukraine, are where they are not bound by the same rules for the European Union itself, and member states of the European Union have sought to push people, asylum seekers, into those countries where they essentially are being dumped and don't have the opportunity to make the same kind of asylum claims that they would have in Europe. So in the case of Libya, you have a country that has never signed the Refugee Convention, that has no refugee law whatsoever, that essentially treats all refugees, all asylum seekers simply as illegal immigrants, puts them in very difficult, dirty, overcrowded detention sites, essentially holds them for ransom, demanding that their families pay money to get them released. And where oftentimes in the testimonies that we gathered this year are brutalized by guards and otherwise mistreated.
Basically, detention camps are in other North African states as well. What are the conditions over there?
Well, the country that we spent the most time documenting conditions this year was Libya. So that's the one that I was in Libya, although we were not allowed into those detention centers. I went to Sicily, to Lampedusa, to other parts of Italy and to Malta to interview people who had been in those detention centers where they could speak freely about the experiences that people that are still inside Libya are not able to do, and was able to gather testimonies of beatings, rape, again, overcrowding, lack of food, a lack of medical attention, and people at times being just taken out and dumped into the desert to die. In other countries, we haven't done that level of investigation, so that we don't have particular research that we can point to. But certainly, you're correct that there are detention centers throughout Northern Africa, and European member states, either bilaterally or in some cases through negotiations with the wider European Union, are trying to establish framework agreements and other means of supporting the migration controls in North Africa to prevent people from arriving in the European Union to seek asylum.
So, as from the perspective of Human Rights Watch, is Europe and European policy of border control a hotspot at this moment, or is only one of many hotspots for 2009 and future?
Well, I'd say it's both. It is a hotspot. I think that the question of Italy, for example, pushing back boat migrants to Libya is something new this year. This is a new development in 2009. It creates an extremely dangerous precedent that we don't want other countries to follow, and of course we don't want Italy to continue doing this as well. So this was a giant step backwards in terms of refugee protection globally, to have Italy take people, forcibly return them with no screening whatsoever to determine whether they might be refugees or have other vulnerabilities that would need to be addressed before sending them to a country that has a very poor record in the treatment of migrants and has no capacity to protect refugees. But saying that, there are quite a number of other hotspots in the world as well. I mean, we have places like the Democratic Republic of Congo and Sudan with enormous refugee and internally displaced persons problems that, in a sense, make Europe's problems pale in comparison. And I think it's important for Europeans to keep the perspective that as difficult as the immigration issues are, as difficult as it is to create fair and balanced procedures for determining asylum claims, that the problems that are faced in many African countries, for example, are vastly more difficult, with physical protection being the first concern in many instances.